Alright class, we're getting ready for a Unit 2 test. If you hear sound in the background, it's because it's halftime at a football game. On number 1, we're going to apply our knowledge about how we identify functions in graph form. You remember that we're going to apply vertical line test. You draw vertical lines, and as long as it only hits one time, then it is a function. So every time we draw a vertical line, it only hits once. So the first two are functions. You might be looking over on this side and thinking that overlaps. It is still curving down into the side, so it is not a function. It is a function. It is not hitting more than one time at any of those points. Here on the right, we see that it does hit many times. As long as it hits more than once, it is not a function. So C would be the answer. This also only hits one time. On question number 2, it asks us for range. We know that range is asking for y, the output, the dependent variable. The y looks like the g in range, so we can differentiate it from domain, which is x. In a mapping diagram, it's laid out in the form for us, so the answers are listed right there: 4, 16, 25, and 36. Question number 3 tells us that there's a function with the following points, and it asks which is a correct way to represent it. Domain means x, so we compare these with the x values. -3, -3, -2. -2 is not one of our domains, so we know A cannot be the answer. On B, it tells us that the domain, which is x, is -3. There is no -3 except for in the first, so that one works. -2 works. -1 works. 0, 1. Now we're going to check out the range, which is y. -4. Looking for a -4. There it is, so that one works out. -3 works. 0 works. 5 works. So that is the domain and range. Just for good measure, we can check the other ones. So this would be -3, 5. We go over to -3 on our graph. Up 5, we see that that's a point, so that one's fine. -2, 0 would be -2, 0. That point is fine. -1, -3. That point is fine. 0, -4. That point is fine. And 1, -3. That point is fine. So C is also a correct answer. D, we look at our 2 points, compare them. -3, 5, -3. It does not go to anywhere where there's a 5. There's no 5 in the range, so D would not be an answer. So at this point, D is out, A is out, and it could be either one of these. So on this question, there were 2 correct answers. Moving to number 4, it asks us about barbells and weights. Each pair of plates is placed on it. If X pairs of plates add to the barbell, it gives us the function. It wouldn't have had to. Based on the story it told us, we could have come up with that ourselves. And it asks us for the range. We know that range is y, and in this equation, y is certainly not that little x. Y is f of x. We've talked about that before. So if we're wanting to know the outcome, the output of this equation, we'd have to plug in some x's in order to get what our y is. So, what are some of the x's we can put into this problem? Set of weights includes a 4-pound barbell and 6 pairs of weighted plates. So the barbell is the barbell, and then the weighted plates would go on the ends as weights. So what is the range of the function that can be added in? Well, what if we add 1 pair, 6 pairs? So if we add 1 pair, that's 20 times 1 plus 4 is equal to 24. What if we add 2 pairs? That'd be 20 times 2 plus 4. 20 times 2 is 40, plus 4 would be 44. So we've already eliminated, we haven't finished finding our output sets, but we know it's not A. We could put in, on this one, it looks like it could be correct. They have an extra one, so that could be, if they say we put on 0 plates, we know we're going to get 4, so that does check out. This one doesn't match. 4, 44, that leaves one out. The answer is B. Alright, question number 5 asks which one is a function, so we're doing function identification. You remember the rule for function identification is that the set of domain cannot repeat, so none of the x's. No repeat, no repeat. Here's the -1. That's not our answer. 7's repeat, that's not our answer. -2, 2, -6, 6, none of those repeat. 10 and 10 repeat, so the answer is C. For number 6, the graph of a function is shown below, which best describes the range. Yet again, range means y, so we're going to squish the graph to the y-axis. When we do that, this point comes over to 7. This point comes over to -2, and that whole line right here gets squished all to the y-axis, so now it's just flat. The lowest y value that was used is -2. The highest y value that was used is 7, so our range is from -2 to 7. The answer choice that corresponds with that would be one of these two. Now, we're used to using this symbol for both of them, and that's because most of the time we've used closed circles like this one. But what does this open circle mean right here? If it's not shaded in, that means it cannot be equal to that. So this symbol is only less than, not less than or equal to. So the correct answer is B. All right, number 7, given f of x is equal to 7, parentheses 3 minus x, close parentheses, what is the value of f of -5? You should remember that the function notation normally has f of x, so since they've put a -5 where the x would be, that means x is equal to 5. So we plug that in to the equation, so it's 7 parentheses 3 minus, instead of x we put parentheses -5, close parentheses, 3 minus -5. What is minus negative? 2 negatives make a positive, so it's plus. So that's really 7 times 8, because 3 plus 5 is 8. And then 7 times 8 is equal to 56. That's the first one. Now they ask us to do it again. This time it's for f of 5. So we plug it in, use the same equation. F of 5 is equal to 7 times 3 minus, parentheses, 5. 7 parentheses 3 minus 5, this time is -2. 7 times -2 is -14. Number 8 is asking us for function identification again. Is it a function or not? We've talked about how in a table, if the x's repeat, it is not a function, so that one is no. In a graph, we're looking for a vertical line test. If it ever hits any of the dots more than once, this one does not. It only hits once, so that is yes. For mapping diagrams, it must be the case that each of our domains, each of our inputs, has only one arrow coming out of it. Each input has only one output, so that one is okay. Yes. Here we see that one of our inputs has 2 outputs, 2 numbers coming out of it, so that is not okay. That's no. We look to see if any of our x's repeat. None of those x's repeat, so that is. Once again, we look to see if our x's repeat. Here, both the 3's repeat, so the same number 3 has two different outputs, 4 and -5, so that is not correct. On number 9, we see it's asking for domain and range. We know domain is equal to the x's, so all of our x values, 2, -1, 0, 3, and -4. We know that range is y, or the output values, so we look at each of our y's. That would be 5, 3, -1, 3, and -2. And you remember, the correct notation would be if you put it in order, from least to greatest. So if the STAR test uses that notation, you'll just need to recognize it. As usual, I'm not particular about if you list them in order. It asks us for what the range is. Range is y, we know that, f of x, and it gives us the domain. So this is just another way of asking the question that we solved in question number 7. We were given an equation, and then it said, here's your x value. This is asking us, what is the range? That means the output. And it gave us some domains, some x values. So we're going to do the same thing. It's just a different way of asking the same question. So let's solve it for the first one. F of, the first one they want us to solve is -3 equals -2x minus 4. Instead of the x, we know that we're going to plug in what our x is in this scenario, -3. So that's equal to -2 times -3 is +6 minus 4 is equal to 2. So the first output would be 2, which is right here and right here. We can already eliminate 2 of our answer choices that don't have a 2. For the next input, we have -2, so it's the same equation. F of -2 is equal to -2. Instead of the x, we put what our new x is, -2 minus 4. -2 times -2 is +4 minus 4 is equal to 0. We look and we see this one has the correct one, so we know it's automatically going to be our answer since it's the last option that can work. Alright, question number 11. Create a graph for the following mapping diagram. Is it a function? So this one we have to do 2 things. Graph it, and then is it a function? So our first point would be -3, 0, -3, 0. Our next point would be -1, 4. So we go left 1, up 4. The next point would be 2, 7, over 2, up 7, and then the last point would be 4, 4, over 4, up 4. Now, we could already tell from the mapping diagram that each of our x's had only one line coming out of it, so we knew it was a function, but we could also, now that it's graphed, apply the vertical line test and see it only hits each one time. Question number 12. We have a function. They tell us to substitute the 3. That it used to be an x, now it's a -3, so we substitute that in. -3 is equal to, instead of the x, it's 4 parentheses, -3 plus 8. 4 times -3 is -12 plus 8. -12 plus 8 is -4. 4 sets of ordered pairs are shown below. Which is a function? We're going to compare our x's again. None of those repeat, so 1 is a function. We already see 2 zeros repeat. 2 is not a function. 2 4's repeat. It's not a function. 5, 2, 4, 3. That is a function. So we're looking for 1 and 4. 1, 2, and 3 is not. 2 and 3. 1 and 4 only. The answer is H. Which graph has a range? That means y of this, and a domain, that's x, of this. So for range, it has to go from -1 to 4. So from -1 up to 4. This line does not go from -1 to 4, so A is not it. Let's look at B, from -1 up to 4. That is the range of that line, so the range worked on B. Let's look at C, from -1 to 4. No, this line is continuing past the upper limit of 4, so C cannot be an answer. And then we look at D, from -1. We see it's down below, which is not where we want it, up to 4. So it had the right upper limit, but not the bottom limit. D is not an answer, so without even looking at domain, we can identify B as the answer. Let's just compare domain just to make sure. X has to be greater than -1, so here's -1, and there's an arrow going that direction, so it will go right in perpetuity. And that's your review for your test. If you can solve these problems effectively, you'll be able to be successful on your test. Good luck.